A pleasant good morning to everyone joining us today in our virtual panel discussion and open day. A special welcome to members of our campus executive management team, deans and deputy deans, heads of departments, members of the business community and captains of the industry, members of our campus community, members of the media, and to our local and regional community. I am Dr. Mina Rambukas, Deputy Dean for Planning and Programming in the Faculty of Social Sciences and Head of the Business Development Unit. The Business Development Unit is proud to partner with the Faculty of Social Sciences and our Strategic Leadership and Innovation program to discuss today's important topic of strategy in today's turbulent times. The Business Development Unit supports the Faculty of Social Sciences by providing professional training services to our local and regional business community and our public service. We are focused on short-term training workshops and seminars in the areas such as data science, digital marketing, leadership, business communication, data analytics, customer service, and many more. We also offer customized training to our business partners and our public service, as well as research services and consultancy services. Last year, the Business Development Unit hosted a series of initiatives focused on building an effective COVID-19 response. And this year, we continue our engagement with a primary emphasis on building business resilience. Today's meeting draws our attention to the need for strategic planning, leadership, and management. The research shows that successful businesses take the time to understand their current state and chart their future paths. A strategic plan and effective strategic leadership allows businesses to understand the most important issues they confront and how to get to their desired state. This is especially important given the turbulence that we are experiencing and the level of noise that we have in the environment. So this is really the start of our conversation on strategic planning, leadership, and innovation, as well as in management. And we will discuss this concept and these terms later on as we continue throughout the day and in the weeks to come. I take the opportunity to invite you to our open day event, which follows our panel discussion this morning, where we will focus on providing the information on the multiple learning pathways offered by the Faculty of Social Sciences to gain skills and experiences in strategic planning, leadership, and innovation. So it is without delay that I would hand you over to our Business Development Coordinator, Dr. Cherise Purmell-Houghton, who will introduce our distinguished moderator, Professor Sterling Frost, and our distinguished panel members, who we are very grateful. Thank you very much, Cherise.
Thank you, Dr. Rambukas. It is my pleasure and indeed an honor this morning to briefly introduce this phenomenal panel. But before I do so, please permit me to firstly thank each member for readily accepting our invitation and taking the time out of their very busy schedules to be a part of the discussion on the very important topic of combating uncertainty with strategy in today's business landscape. We have with us today our distinguished moderator, Professor Frost, renowned management expert and Deputy Chief Executive Officer, Operations and Administration of the First Citizens Group. Professor Frost has 3 decades of global corporate career experience in North America, Latin America, and the Caribbean region. He is an international management executive who has held senior positions in the financial services sector in a range of areas, including retail and commercial banking, operations management, public affairs, and human resource management. Before joining the First Citizens Group in 2016, he served as Director of Human Resources at the Miami-based Citibank Latin America head office. There he had oversight of 12,000 employees across 13 countries in the Central American and Caribbean region, serving 1.2 million clients. Also on our panel are 3 voices of influence that are truly captains of industry. Firstly, we have Mr. Ian D'Souza, Chief Executive Officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Mr. D'Souza has been a career banker with some 38 years of experience in the industry. He held several senior executive roles at Republic Bank, including Managing Director of FinCorp, President of Republic Bank Dominican Republic, and Managing Director of Republic Bank Barbados. He retired at the level of Executive Director in 2017. Following his retirement from Republic Bank, Mr. D'Souza was appointed Executive Director and CEO of the Cave Hill School of Business and Management at the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill, Barbados. He was also appointed Professor of Practice in Banking and Finance. Also contributing to the panel is Ms. Franca Costello, who sits as the chairperson of Invest TT. Ms. Costello is a director of Lifetime Roofing Limited, where she has served in various capacities in the company, including human resources, accounts, project management, contracts, budget planning and administration, sales, and marketing. Ms. Costello is also a director of the boards of Angostura Holdings Limited and First Citizens Bank Limited, where she brings expertise in operational negotiations with both governmental and private financial institutions. Fun fact, she is the youngest member of the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association to have held the office of president. Last, but certainly not least, we have joining us Mr. Nirad Tiwari, Chief Executive Officer of AmCham Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Tiwari brings with him 25 years experience in media, communications, management, education, and international relations. Mr. Tiwari is a member of the Wilton Park Caribbean 2030 Leaders Network and the National Tripartite Advisory Council, NTAC. Mr. Tiwari was formerly the CEO of the Trinidad and Tobago Coalition of Services Industries, TTCSI, chairman of the Caribbean Network of Services Coalitions, a member of the Communications and Public Affairs Division of the Commonwealth Secretariat in London, UK, and a columnist for the Trinidad Guardian. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I now turn you over to Dr. Sterling Frost, who will begin the conversation on strategy with this esteemed panel.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pernell Hutton, and good morning, everyone. Let me start by making a distinction between strategy, strategic management, and strategic thinking, as they are often used interchangeably, but really require conflicting skill sets and headspaces. Strategy is in a business context, is the making of an integrated set of choices that collectively position the firm in its industry to create sustainable advantage relative to competition and the delivery of superior financial returns. From a national development standpoint, these integrated set of choices are geared toward global competitiveness and human development. Strategic management is an area that has been largely codified. It deals with the processes, the methods, tools, and techniques involved in strategy formulation, planning, and execution. The mindset in strategic management is less intuitive, is less creative and divergent as in strategic thinking, but more logical, more systematic, more convergent and analytical. It sets out a framework of defining your vision and mission, which starts actually with strategic thinking, but then translates your mission and vision into strategic themes or areas of focus, be it diversification, be it people, customer, innovation, and the list goes on. Now, strategic thinking is the forming of linkages in the system, seeing the whole and not just the sum of the parts, and envisioning new solutions to old problems. Now, this requires expert intuition and a depth of industry experience that I believe no artificial intelligence or machine learning can match. Do you think that software, if we take software, we can really juxtapose organizational culture and climate with customer experience and behaviors to provide an optimal integrated set of choices? And that is why I proffer that the path to strategy involves not mining data, but mining talent. And so strategic leadership is not necessarily about pointing the way, but perhaps enabling strategic thinkers. And so some examples of strategic thinkers are the members of our esteemed panel, whom I will now turn to. And I would start with Mr. Ian D'Souza. So Ian, can you share with us what is the relevance of strategy and strategic leadership, specifically toward macroeconomic development and sustainability? But I also want to take you back in time, because I know you were very, very instrumental in what I'm about to say. How did Republic Bank end up in Ghana? What was the strategy? Ian, over to you.
That's a big question. And with that addition, I don't know if I could do it in 5 minutes. I might have to take part of it at the back end. But anyway, thank you very much, Dr. Frost. Good morning to my fellow panelists. And I have to say a special thank you to the Faculty of Social Sciences for inviting me to talk on this subject, which is ever so important at this particular juncture in the economic history of the planet. Once upon a time, to go somewhere distant or unfamiliar, you would get the general directions from persons you may know, that might be friends or family. Then you will proceed in the direction of the destination. In the vicinity of the destination, you would start asking for directions, and the directions would sound like, keep going, turn right by the next parlor, you will see a cow in the pasture, turn left there, go down the road until you see a big mango tree, the house will be opposite. That's how it used to be once upon a time. Oftentimes you would have gotten lost, and when you arrived at your destination, the discussion would either be a big joke about how lost you got, or it would be one of extreme frustration. Today, to do the same thing, before you leave, you go to Google Maps for directions to your destination. Depending on your location, you will also do a street view to familiarize yourself with the surroundings at your destination. Then you will check Waze to see traffic conditions along the way and whether there are any accidents or roadblocks. You may also consider altering your route, and then you would rely on Waze to recalibrate. On the way, you check your estimated time of arrival, and you would send a text, or you would call your host to let them know whether you're on time or whether you're delayed. You then arrive at your destination comfortably and as planned. Difference, right? How is this likened to business strategy, strategic leadership, macroeconomic development, and sustainability? To answer that question, I'll pull out two key macroeconomic indicators. We could talk about GDP growth and unemployment rates. I will also draw on my experience as a corporate banker and more recently on my work as an insolvency and restructuring advisor where I have worked with a number of companies who may have experienced or would have experienced difficulty, much of it associated with the fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, to sustain GDP growth and low rates of unemployment, you need, of course, a stable economy where major drivers of the economy are in good shape. Now, that is an assumption for this discussion. And you also need businesses to be performing well. What does it take for businesses to perform well? It takes strategic leadership and a strategic plan. Like in the case of the person using Google Maps and Waze to get to their destination, a strategic leader will have a vision of where, now he being, this is a generic here, where he wants to go and what the circumstances would be like once he gets there, like similar to using the Google Street View. He then determines his mission and the reason for wanting to get there. So your mission, what you see, the vision of where you want to go, and the mission as to how you're going to get there. Then he considers, having the vision and the mission, what are his strategic imperatives for the business? What are the 3 or 4 things that must be accomplished to achieve the mission and satisfy the vision? Then he looks at his competitive position in the industry. For the academics around us, up to today, I can say to you, even in Republic Bank, the good old Porter's 5 forces model, that is still used in the assessment, and it is used in the assessment of even the corporate customers. So an assessment of your position in the industry, your competitive position. And then the good old SWOT, it never fails. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Where are your opportunities? And what are your threats? Having assessed those, in the strategic analysis and planning exercise, you then look at how you can leverage your strengths and how you can take advantage of your opportunities. Then you look at your weaknesses and you determine what you have to do to correct those and how you deal with any threats that you might be faced with. Then, having done all of that, you look at the strategic initiatives. So you've done all of that assessment. You understand the industry, you understand the competitive environment, you understand yourself, right? You are then able to connect your strategic initiatives to the strategic imperatives that you would have identified in answer to your vision and your mission. Having done all of that, you are then able to sit down now as a commercial enterprise and extract your financial performance. You do your planning for your profit and loss, your cash flows, your balance sheet, and so on. So good. And finally, the last part of it, of course, in the strategic leadership exercise, you extract the measurements that you would want to confirm that you are, in fact, keeping on track as you go down the line. Now, good strategic leaders and strategic leadership teams do this once every 3 years. And what they do every year is they get back together and they check themselves to see where they are relative to that big strategic plan. And they make adjustments as necessary. Very much like the guy using Waze, where you need to, if you run into traffic, you choose an alternative route, same kind of thing. So to use the use of strategic planning by good strategic leaders, that keeps the business environment in view. It keeps the leadership on track. It keeps the business growing and contributing to GDP growth, which is to answer the question on macroeconomic growth. It keeps stakeholders, their shareholders, their creditors, and their employees contented and safe. Now, Sterling, I will just talk a little bit about the other part of your question, Republic Bank, and why is Republic Bank in Ghana today? Well, the short answer to that is because they play cricket there. The long answer to it is that Republic Bank, as we were growing, we were doing very well, oil-based economy, the bank was extremely profitable. Of course, the more profitable you are, you need investments because you have to keep your shareholders happy. You can't stay stagnant and you can't sit on piles of cash. So we had looked through the Caribbean. We weren't getting investments at that time in the Caribbean that were providing enough of a return. We tried Latin America. We tried the Dominican Republic. We had a bad experience there. We had strategic planning advisors. So they said, much to our surprise at the time, we looked at India, then we looked at Africa. But one of the things that became very important for that investment were, and the part of it out of the Dominican Republic experience was that Ghana was a former British colony. They were English speaking. They had similar legislative systems, and they had a similar business culture. More importantly, they were an emerging oil and gas economy. They had just discovered oil offshore, and with the Republic Bank having the knowledge and the expertise as to how you bank customers in an emerging oil and gas market, we thought that the bank that we found there, which was a nice little bite, a foothold, a beachhead onto this, the African continent, we thought that for the size of the investment, it was worthwhile. So that is the short answer. But being a former British colony, they also play cricket. I will hold there for now.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you for bringing this live from a Ghana standpoint and your experience. And talking about oil and gas, let me turn to Franca and ask Franca. Franca, as we continue the discussion on sustainability, from where you sit, what's your view on business strategy and strategic leadership's relevance in diversifying away from oil and gas?
Thank you, Professor Frost, and thank you, Yui, for having me here to represent InvestTT. And on this panel, it's great to be on this panel with both Mr. Tiwari and D'Souza. Welcome to all of the guests. I see you guys have a great following here with 109 persons, and welcome to any media that isn't part of the group. That's a great question, Professor Frost, because certainly we've been talking about diversifying the economy away from oil and gas for quite some time in Trinidad and Tobago, and for the obvious reasons that we don't need to lament on. And we talk a lot about diversifying away from oil and gas, but I would challenge that discussion a lot with the saying that we need to diversify the economy inclusive of the oil and gas. And the reason why I would challenge that is that the oil and gas industry has been a tremendous benefit to Trinidad in giving a lot of the infrastructure that we have, a lot of the revenues. Obviously, it's 28% of our revenue, as announced in the budget. It was 28% of our revenue, while 72% was accounted for non-oil and gas. And while the world is moving towards renewable energy and definitely diversifying economies, the reason why I would challenge that we need to run parallel is that while we use the benefits of the oil and gas revenues and we diversify into industries that bring so much more stability to our economy, it creates jobs, it harnesses a new education sector, and it gives a new quality of life because we don't have the volatility then that comes with the oil and gas. So given the continued importance of the country's energy sector and its role in funding the country's future development, we do believe that there is a need to both incentivize increased production while also approaching energy transition. And the current global developments that have treated a pressing need to first and foremost unlock investment capacity, leading to the more rapid monetization of our petroleum resource, which will then in turn allow the pursuit of renewable energies and support non-oil and gas industries. And we saw that there was a lot of strategic intent in that coming out of the October 2021 budget, The government certainly acknowledged the need to engage in comprehensive reviews of the attractiveness of the country's energy tax regime. Still, a national policy on long-term value creation of our energy resources would certainly enable the country to harness the experience and the skill set of our formidable existing pool of resources in the energy sector and build upon our considerable foundational strengths in the energy space. So what we see in the government strategy is a focus on business continuity. And there's a big discussion around that in the private sector as well. And so you see the chamber heads talking a lot about prioritizing digitalization, enabling small and medium enterprises, attracting foreign investment, facilitating trade, and of course, improving the ease of doing business. All in all, there's a huge drive in seeking to encourage exports by the locally based manufacturers while also directing efforts towards diversification away from the energy sector. So to that end, a number of fiscal incentives were proposed to increase exports, support manufacturing investments, stimulate SMEs, capital investments, and reward technology infusion and digitization. So in the creation and implementation of strategy for economic diversification, there would need to be a focus placed primarily on increasing economic contribution in areas both related and connected to our current economy. And there is a distinct difference between the two. And that would call on research on economic investment trends because the world is changing so rapidly. We're even seeing a new trends happening with the types of foreign investments coming into Trinidad with the BPOs, data collection, constant data collection and analysis to analyze these changes and growth drivers, alignment of growth drivers and attributes available in the TNT region, comparative analysis of where TNT has unique selling propositions, pooling of uncorrelated income streams, building on human capital and utilizing education systems, reforms to improve the ease of doing business, incentivizing private sector participation, stemming brain drain, and capitalizing small and medium-sized enterprises because they are seedlings for that new industry. What does that all mean when it comes to leadership and strategy? Strategy is a vision of any one group of persons or persons in power at a point in time. It can be the head of a small company, a private sector company, government, and so on. Strategy is a changing element that has to be adaptable to outside parameters that are influencing it. Leaders have to be able to take advice from external parties. They have to be able to analyze data that's coming in and be able to adjust the strategy. Being held accountable is probably the most important aspect of a strategy and how it gets implemented then. Alignment, in my opinion, is the first place of making a strategy work. And that means getting leaders on the same page. We all have to be reading from the same page and have a buy-in to that strategy for it to become executed, held accountable to it, and for those results to then come. Strategies have both short-term and long-term benefit results that come out of them, but usually strategies are up to 5-10 years that before you start to see that. That means that they have to be able to transition through successions in both business and in government and in the country. One, it has to be able to ring all the way through. If you're constantly starting over strategies, washing out something that was set 4 years ago, and then turning on, you're never going to see something through. Results are not going, they're going to get stymied. And that is a bigger issue that I see with a lot of strategies in both private sector and sometimes in government as well, that there's this constant start over. So I wanted to end on that point where I saw that Exim Bank had a great article in the newspaper this morning announcing that $296 million was sold into the private sector in the last 4 years. And I wanted to say that that came from a clear strategy that, and I have the inside knowledge with the TTMA, where my former president before me, Chris Alcazar, set a strategy to address the FX shortage. And that strategy was carried through with me, and now with the new president, Trisha Kusal at TTMA, working with Exim Bank. So I took 3 leaders working with the government, working with Exim Bank to do transformative change at Exim Bank to push that US dollars out. And it has had a formidable effect on the 123 manufacturers that have benefited from that. And I wanted to congratulate Exim Bank and TTMA for seeing through a strategy through different successions, because that is sometimes lost on new leaders when they step into a role.
Thank you, Franca, and thank you for bearing out the notion of running parallel as well as accountability, alignment, and having a clear strategy and sound leadership. Let me turn to Nirad, and Nirad, from an AmCham perspective, ask you to speak to the relevance of business strategy and strategic leadership to achieving your mission of enhanced competitiveness, influence on policy and legislation, knowledge transfer, generation of new business, and sustainability. Over to you, Nirad.
Thanks very much, Sterling, and congrats to the Faculty of Social Sciences for doing this. Thanks for having me, and good morning to all the participants who are taking the time to be here, and to my fellow panelists, Franca and Ian as well. I think, let me build on what each of you, one thing that each of you has said. So, Sterling, you started by talking about leaders. The role of leaders is enabling subordinates to be strategic thinkers. And then Ian spoke about a journey and making adjustments along the way to get to the final destination. And in Franca's remarks, she was talking about, among other things, the importance of a long-term energy strategy that's clearly defined. So what I would start by saying is that effective strategy, from my point of view, from our point of view, starts with defining your ideal end goal and answering the question why. So where do you want to go and why do you want to get there? If you can define that, then the strategies that you implement or that you decide upon and you're executing along the way will be moored on something solid. And if your strategy is moored on something solid, when you get pulled in multiple directions, as will inevitably happen along the way, Ian spoke about annual reviews. We do reviews twice a year. You can refocus on what you are supposed to be doing and why. So if we are trying to influence policy, for example, and bring in investment, we have to be mindful of that in our public statements, in the events that we do, in how we interact with members, in the opportunistic initiatives in which we engage. And that's, I mean, that's another part of strategy, which is that, like Gladwell spoke about or wrote about in The Outliers, if you are prepared, if you spend the 10,000 hours preparing, when the opportunity presents itself, you can take advantage of it. But if you don't prepare, then you will not be able to take advantage of opportunities as they arise. And so I would end this little opening by saying you need to have a goal, a broad goal in mind, whether it is to be the biggest company in the Caribbean and Latin America, in the world, whether it is to be the most efficient, or whatever your goal is. Why are you trying to get to that goal? And then you design, you say, well, what are the things that we need to take into account that are risks, that are threats? And then what are the opportunities that present themselves? Because the other side of a threat is an opportunity. And the final thing I'd say is this: we often think about the risk of doing something and ignore the risk of not doing it. So when we think of strategy, many people, many companies think of a protective strategy. Now, a protective strategy, more often than not, simply means that you get worn down by attrition. If you are not proactive in your strategy, you will have difficulty growing, and chances are you will be worn down by attrition, as in you will be facing a shrinking pie over time. And so I'd like to leave it there for now and open the discussion a little more.
Thank you, Nirad. And that's a nice lead in for me to change gears a bit now. Let me get to where the rubber meets the road and get into Ian's engine room. Specifically, Ian, does the TT Chamber, do you have a strategic plan? Do you intend to morph your strategic plan, if it isn't already, in alignment with the National Development Strategy Vision 2030?
Yeah, we thanks for the question. We do, and I'll answer the question bravely, because one of our competitors, Nirad, is here, and a former competitor, Franca, as president of the TTMA, is here. But the answer to your question is absolutely so. There's a 2016 strategic plan that was updated in 2020, but that was right before the pandemic. We are right now in the middle of a strategic planning exercise, and one would wonder, why does a Chamber of Commerce need a strategic plan? Well, like anything else, once you are on a mission to achieve an objective, and in this case, the Chamber has members, and the objective of the Chamber is to be the voice of business for the membership, right? Now you're operating in a context where you have other chambers. You have AmCham, TTMA, as I said, the Energy Chamber, the Confederation of Chambers. You have a whole a range of chambers and business service organizations. And these chambers, for their survival, of course, they rely on having a good membership base and having members that pay dues and so on. And these chambers also go out to largely the same set of corporate sponsors. So in a form, it is a business, and you have to do the same thing. You look at your vision, your mission, what are your strategic imperatives. You look at your competitive circumstances, where you're strong, where you're weak, all of the same things. And then from that, you plan on the initiatives that you want to employ to make sure that you're serving your members satisfactorily and meeting your objectives. So the short answer to that question is yes, we do it, and we are in the middle of doing it right now. We have a session with a retreat with our board in June.
Thanks, Ian. And if just to steal the term, the voice of members. Franca, the voice of members. So Invest TT partners with investors in the non-energy sectors. Is part of this partnership developing strategic plans?
Yes, I would have to say that we have a great influence on these strategic plans, because information and data collection is key for creating an informative strategic plan. Most of the investors, the FDIs and the LBIs that are coming to us already have a strategic plan, and that's why they're coming to InvestTT. They have a strategic plan of either expanding locally or coming into the country. What we do have an influence on then is we inform them of the type of labor that we have, the rates of labor, location and real estate options, and subsidies and grants and incentives that are offered as well. So we see, like, we have the SEZ legislation, and we will inform on how that can influence We then tie together different stakeholders that will have an influence on how the business becomes operationalized as well, moving stumbling blocks or anything that's inhibiting business from progressing quickly. And then we create an advocacy policy register that informs the ministry too of how they can improve the ease of doing business and support. So while we don't write a strategic plan for any particular business, which I wouldn't encourage anyways, you can't, doing the work for a business is never advised. A business has to do that themselves, because a lot of it comes from gut instinct, passion, business intuition, and so on. But we do certainly give a lot of the ingredients that go into that strategic planning. And then we would meet regularly. There's a lot of aftercare service at InvestCT. So even after an LDI or a foreign investor has made the decision to go forward with that plan, and the real estate is all signed off, employment contracts are completed, InvestCT stays with that investor to make sure that they get through to operationalization and even expansion. So we've had BPOs, foreign direct investors, that have invested in Trinidad, ICOR being one, and they have opened 3 business operations in Trinidad. InvestCT was a part of all 3 of them and helping them expand, and they have, so they're constantly running their strategy by InvestCT on their plans to expand in Trinidad. So yes, we are part of the strategic planning, but not that we write it. So we give the information that informs it.
That's very significant. Thank you. Nurad, if AmCham had to do an environmental scan, and I may be putting you on the spot, what are some major local and or regional pestle issues members need to consider in ensuring that their strategies remain competitive and risks are managed?
Sure. So let me just say, before I get into that, I mean, we see other chambers as cooperators in a way, right? So I mean, and I think that's one of the things that if you are a small economy, whether it be a sub-economy or a small national economy like Trinidad and Tobago, we always have to be mindful of, we can compete in some ways, but if we collaborate on the big things, we become more competitive, and that's how clusters are built as well. So you can compete for individual contracts, of course, but you can collaborate to do bigger things or to attack bigger markets and attract bigger customers. And I think that that's one of the things in a pestle that we need to look at, the ability of firms and of the leadership of the country, or inability to collaborate. And one of the things that we have pointed out at a national level is the fractious nature of the politics leads to a legislative environment that is much less than ideal. And as a result of that, you build low levels of trust. And if you have low levels of trust in the leadership, it is hard to all row in one direction as a country. More specifically, of course, one of the risks is the inability to access foreign exchange, particularly for small businesses, small and medium businesses, and therefore the need, and as I said earlier, with every threat, there's an opportunity. So the need, therefore, to redesign the business in such a way that you are less dependent on inputs that require foreign exchange and or earn foreign exchange from your business operations. And it may mean changing the business. And so just like we talk about diversifying from oil and gas, it doesn't mean that you stop producing oil and gas and petchems. It means you take the opportunity while you have it to invest in other things that can also be as important to the economy, such as the tech sector, as we've been advocating for, so that we have another industry and another industry that could earn us foreign exchange. So when we look at things like debt to GDP ratios, which is also a risk to the macro financial stability of the economy. I mean, of course, ideally we should pay down our debt and balance our budget. But if you increase the denominator, the GDP, your debt to GDP ratio also falls because your GDP is bigger. And so creation of other industries that will earn you foreign exchange and income. So in terms of the international environment, the risks that are causing the imported inflation and therefore increasing the cost of living are present, and I think will persist for some time in the medium term. And that means that there's going to be tremendous social pressure because the cost of living is going to increase. And we can't talk about GDP growth if, and that GDP growth is simply based on higher prices for the things that we are producing in smaller quantities. So we are producing less gas. We are not producing the level of petrochemicals that we used to produce, but our GDP would grow relative to 4 or 5 years ago, and certainly in 2020, when prices were depressed and we were still producing the same amount of things. But how does that translate into social benefits and a society in which people are comfortable and feel like they can progress, and we break the cycle of intergenerational poverty? That is something that we need to address as a risk. And there are business opportunities in there, including social innovation opportunities. But there are, and for bigger companies, aligning their ESG agenda with that would also ensure will impact positively on the long-term stability of the economy. Now, having said that, the risks that were present pre-pandemic, when we saw the shifts in policy and posture of the big economies, in particular the US vis-a-vis China, and what is happening in the South China Sea, and the risks that were being talked about to supply chains, meant that even pre-pandemic, companies were looking at their supply chain. The pandemic pulled the scab off of that, and companies now realize that having long supply chains is an existential risk. And so there's huge potential in nearshoring and reshoring in absolute terms, but also in risk mitigation. And that could also create opportunities in new sectors. So there are the traditional sectors like the IT-enabled services, some manufacturing and the like, but then there's the potential for biotech and the development of a biotech industry in Trinidad and Tobago. And then finally, given that it's not wise and probably unlikely that we will ever develop mass manufacturing. I'm not talking about the manufacturing sector that we have. I'm talking about things that require thousands of workers to produce things cheaply. What we should be focused on is the design and intellectual property element in production, whether those are tangible goods, such as those in the manufacturing sector, or whether those are intangible goods, such as software. So can we move up the value chain so that what we have and what we produce is not easily replicated or replaced by cheaper sources of labor or cheaper sources of production?
Thank you, Nirad. Franca, you mentioned in your earlier discussion the need for accountability. And so I want to take you to several government incentives are offered. And this speaks to the need for accountability and strategic performance management systems. So what systems are in place to ensure strategic performance of investors in alignment to national development, that is, in justifying exceptions and allowances?
Yes, thanks for that question. And I'm so excited about so much of what Niraj just brought up with developing the economies and recognizing that it's not an abandonment of the oil and gas sector. And it's more, it truly is a diversification and a transformation of how we look at our economies, recognizing our limitations, of course, and where our strategic advantages are. You know, when Teleperformance launched in recently, about 2 weeks ago, Teleperformance is the third largest BPO in the world. And they are here in Trinidad as our third BPO company. And he said the strategic advantage of Trinidad over or anywhere else that they could go to reach Latin America and the Caribbean region and so on was our people. Our people. He said that our people were the best fit, being English speaking, or warm voice, warm inviting voice, and that we had such a good work ethic and that we were highly trainable. And it was a real wow moment, because I think that a lot of times we can be very hard on ourselves about what our strategic advantage is. He didn't say, oh, your strategic advantage is land or low energy and low cost for electricity and so on. He also said one of our strategic advantages was infrastructure. And I thought that was also a great note. Sometimes it takes an external eye to really remind us of where our benefits are. And it is true that Trinidadians are very warm when it comes to that, our voices and so on. So the BPO industry is a change for us in foreign direct investment, and we're doing very well in that area. So the incentives that are being offered out there are intent on building on that non-energy sector. And one of my favorite incentives that has recently come out is a small and medium enterprise listing on the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, which acknowledges that SMEs have played a vital role in the TNT economy. They face numerous challenges, such as access to finance and regulatory hurdles and workforce gaps. So in light of this, the Minister of Finance proposed a full tax holiday for the first 5 years to new SMEs listing on the TTSE, and granting tax exemption to business levy and green fund levy and so on. Now, you would think that that would attract a lot of attention for SMEs, and there would be this huge uplisting on the stock exchange and so on, but it has not been so, and it begs the question of why. And that is because a lot of our SMEs are not tax compliant. And why is that? That's because they are fearful of becoming tax compliant, and they're not recognizing the cost benefit analysis. Again, it comes down to data and financial review and analysis of what is it? A strategic plan, a strong strategic plan that says, where am I going in 5 years with this business and building it out? So an incentive like this would do very well in the US, in the Europe, and even on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. But we need to do an education push on our SMEs to say, become tax compliant, take advantage of these types of incentives and grants that are there for you. Another one that I particularly liked was a 5% reduction in corporation tax rate for a period of 3 years for significant exporters of local goods with annual revenue of 500,000. What that is saying is that export and you will get a financial benefit back in low reduced corporation tax. What you see happening here is a clear reward system to investments that are driving non-oil and gas sectors, right? Another one was the manufacturing sector development and expansion incentive, where it encouraged development across the manufacturing sector, excluding the petrochemical industry. The minister proposed to reduce the corporation tax by 5%. And again, with the foreign investment sector, there was a withholding tax rate that was a viable investment jurisdiction within CARICOM, since investors will now have greater tax savings without accessing tax treaties. So these profits can be reinvested into TNT-based activities. And then the SEZ, legislation was a huge impact for InvestCT, and we have already seen that influence foreign investors and local investors' decision to expand and invest in Trinidad. How do you take all these incentives and make sure that they're working, that they're being held accountable, and that they're a tool that's supposed to excite the change that you want, tracking the progress of each. And so I'll come back to a great tangible one is, again, the Exim Bank. That was an incentive as well. Back in 2019, there was an advocacy for $100 million to be given to Exim Bank, to be given in turn to the manufacturers. And we had to excite that change and do a whole cultural transformation on how Exim Bank was going to execute that 100 million. And we challenged it with 100 million US to 100 companies. And today we see that they have met that target. So we're talking about, you talk strategy, big picture, and it looks great on paper. Then how do you make that, how do you drive that strategy through execution? You create incentives and packages that naturally drive everyone to pick it up and be excited about it. Then you hold it accountable and you measure it, 100 million to 100. And once you start to measure it and you report on it, then persons start to have confidence and trust, as Neeraj said. Trust is so important. You know, there was a study that showed what people want in leaders. There were two variables, performance and there was trust. And of course, a great performer is going to deliver results, but people didn't want a great performer that they didn't trust. They didn't know how is that performance going to benefit me? Is it going to benefit them? Is it going to hurt me? People actually prefer to have high trust and medium performance. And when you have a leadership where there's high trust and adequate performance, you get persons buying into it, and many hands make for light work. And when you have a plethora of stakeholders buying into a strategy, its success is going to naturally come through. So InvestCT itself has also taken up the mantra of being held accountable and reporting on metrics. And so last week we did a full publication in the newspaper of InvestCT's own performance. We have a target of 230 million that TT that we are supposed to deliver by financial year end September. And last week was our mid-year. We reported on our mid-year point, and we were happy to announce that we have reached 52% of our target. But good news or bad news, you must be held accountable, because when you announce it, then you invite other perspectives and stakeholders. You invite confidence, you encourage trust in your strategy and your leadership style.
Thank you, Franca, and congratulations on your achievement and for also being open and transparent. We do have a few questions from our audience, and let me thank our audience for participating and for engaging us. The question is, and Neeraj, I'll pose this to you. From your experience, how would you say the alignment of organizational structure and strategy impacts performance?
That's a good one. So if you don't have the structure to support the strategy, then the strategy can't be implemented. So Franca was talking about accountability. So data matters. So if you have structure should follow strategy and not the other way around. Otherwise, if you have a structure and you're trying to fit your strategy around your structure, it's sort of hit and miss. So once you design your strategy, you have to say, what is the structure that I need to be able to execute on this? Therefore, what are the human resources I need, and what are the supporting processes, including technologies, that we need as an organization to be able to deliver on this, and how will we track our progress over time? And once you are able to define that strategy, explain it to your stakeholders. And I say stakeholders, so at the level of the board or owners, you have to have alignment, because if the owners in a small business, you have 2-3 owners and you're pulling against each other, your strategy will not have a chance. So you have to align on strategy. Once you align on the leadership level, you have to get the input of those who have to execute the strategy. So the staff, the team. And that should be an iterative process. It shouldn't be that the leadership defines a strategy and then tells people, this is the strategy, go out and execute. Because you won't get buy-in that way. You need to say, look, these are the things we want to do. This is why we want to do them. How do you guys think we can execute these, and in what time frame? And of course, many times staff will say, well, you know, they'll be a little conservative in their targets, and you'll have to push or set incentives for stretch targets and the like. And then say, well, okay, what are the things you need to be able to execute on these things? And they might give you a wish list, and you'll say the wish list is costly and we don't have the resources at this point. But if you could take me to here by this point, then I could give you these things or this thing, including maybe another few team members or whatever it is. And then you grow. And in that process, you're building trust, right? You're building trust that if you deliver, we will deliver, and vice versa. And you align your structure to your strategy in that way and build the culture around that.
Thank you very much, Narad. And just looking at the second question, which I'll pose to Ian. Ian, being soldiers of corporate TNT, how did your members use strategy to build an effective response to the current disruptions in the economy?
All right, so that question is in the past tense still.
Yeah, I guess they were talking about the pandemic, at the start of the pandemic. Yeah.
And the immediate response to that is that it is work that is in progress, because the economy is now opening and people are looking at their circumstances and hopefully doing some proper strategic analysis around their business and their business circumstances to decide on the way forward. Because as we would have experienced, business circumstances have changed all the way around. Markets and industries and how they operate have changed as a result of the pandemic. Markets and industries have been impacted by supply chain issues. The way products are delivered and consumed, that has changed. Consumer expectations and how you deliver products to them, those have also changed. So the thing about it is, there is and I hate to use this old adage, but the new normal, it becomes an imperative that all businesses now look at themselves and reassess their competitive positions and develop strategic plans that keep them in the game. And sure, you at First Citizens Bank, you are seeing that there has been one good thing coming out of COVID-19 is that the push that we were looking for in the financial services industry and getting people to use the internet, COVID-19 forced that. So the thing about it is the banks have therefore now to ensure that their delivery of electronic services is absolutely critical. Now, I want to use a little segue into what we, again, and back to the question on what we are seeing. What we are seeing, or what we have seen, and a bit taking from my past, is that the larger businesses who have the resources, who have the professional resources on staff, they have the ability to sit down and do the strategic assessment, do the data assessment, do the analysis, and plan their way forward. SMEs have a problem. SMEs don't have the don't always have the professional resources on staff. They don't have the financial resources to acquire those skills. And generally, the SMEs, there's a little bit of an indictment on them. They tend not to place enough emphasis on strategic planning, the analysis and the planning. And I'd say to you that having worked on some high-risk accounts post my Republic Bank days, I can say to you, many of those accounts that I would have looked at, one of the primary characteristics was the lack of or absence of strategic planning. So short point, mouthful, but short point, the dealing with the effect of the pandemic is work in progress, but the SMEs have a long way to go to ensure that they get through this thing whole. And I would say to you as well, we at the Chamber, we are doing some specific programs to help those SMEs who are in need of assistance at this point in time in terms of analysis and planning the way forward. But that's it. For us, is a work in progress right now.
Thank you, Ian. And just to take off from you, work in progress, from Nirad, a journey, and from Franca, a parallel run. It has become clearer to us this morning that the path to strategy is about a unique, integrated set of decisions. Decisions not just about technology and modernization, but about transforming our behaviors and attitudes toward work and strengthening accountability across our organizations and institutions. Strategic thinking must consider how all these levers will be pulled and in what order. That's the structure. But what we also need the courage to do is to articulate and face these problems, which will come from your strategic leadership, and the discipline to follow through, which will come from your strategic management. Let me thank Ian, Franca, and Nirad for their time, their expertise, and their knowledge, and for bringing to us the reality, for bringing to this very nebulous topic at times, a reality and a perspective. I also wish to thank the Faculty of Social Sciences, Business Development Unit for their continued work in creating relevant opportunities and interventions in developing the minds of our people. Thank you very much. And thank you for being a very engaging audience by your participation and your questions. Back to you, Dr. Purmel Hutton. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Frost. I must say, what wonderful nuggets of wisdom that we would have received this morning in this very, very rich discourse. So I have the pleasure of delivering the vote of thanks this morning, and I must say that it has been a pleasure having these three influential voices from the business community share their experiences and the way that they would have used strategy in their respective organizations. So on behalf of the Faculty of Social Sciences, I wish to thank our distinguished moderator, Professor Frost, and our esteemed panel of speakers, Mr. Ian D'Souza, Ms. Franca Costello, and Mr. Nirad Tiwari for their time and the invaluable discourse this morning. I also wish to thank the hardworking UE team for their dedication and continued support in making these events a success. It would, however, be remiss of me if I did not thank the participants of this morning's session for your keen attention and contribution to the discussion via your questions in the chat or social media inboxes and or email inboxes. I think it was certainly a clear indication of your desire to deepen your understanding and competency in the area of strategic leadership. So it is on this note that I take the opportunity to officially kickstart the Faculty of Social Sciences Open Day where you will learn more about the multiple pathways available to you to develop the skill of strategy to outperform your competitors, especially in these times of uncertainty. So please permit me to just share my screen briefly. As I take you through these multiple learning pathways. So let me say that I am extremely proud that the Faculty of Social Sciences has demonstrated its commitment to being solutions oriented, as evidenced by the available learning pathways which we offer. Our first pathway, which is short-term in nature, is our Professional Development Certificate in Strategic Management, hosted by the Business Development Unit. Why this seminar? Well, this seminar has been crafted to revive the field of strategic management in the Caribbean and also articulate how strategic plans can be implemented effectively. And it will cover specific topics such as strategic thinking, strategic planning, strategic execution, monitoring, evaluation, and calibration. And when are we having this? Well, this seminar takes place on May 18th, that's the start date, and it runs for 4 days. It's a virtual seminar, and it ends on the 26th of May. And it will be facilitated by none other than Dr. Sterling Frost. What's the cost of the seminar? It's going to be $2,800 TT dollars or US $400. And I must let you know that registration is ongoing, but our spaces are certainly filling up quite quickly. So we have placed on the screen our email address, which was also placed in the chat for you to reach out to us. And I can tell you that we will be reaching out to the members or the participants of today's session in order to share more details with you on this virtual upcoming seminar. So this is just one pathway, because we did say that the Faculty of Social Sciences offers multiple pathways to learning about strategy. Our second pathway is that of the MSc in Strategic Leadership and Innovation. And this is a 1-year fully online program. It's a fantastic opportunity to commit to a longer term pathway in learning about strategy that involves a lot more rigor. All right, so here with us this morning is the Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences, Dr. Akola Cameron, the strategist behind the Faculty of Social Sciences, having designed the concept of the multiple learning pathway strategy. Dean Cameron is extremely passionate about the SLIN program, which is this MSc in Strategic Leadership and Innovation. And she's going to shine the spotlight on the details of this amazing postgraduate opportunity. Dean Cameron, over to you.
Thank you very much, Cherise. And I also want to thank the panelists for really laying the foundation or providing that context for our multiple learning pathways in the Faculty of Social Sciences. And I want to first of all sort of reiterate the context within which we are operating and how this particular program is responding to the context that we find ourselves in now. And Ian opened the floor and really set the context by making the statement that strategic, but businesses, all organizations need, and he emphasized the need for strategic leadership and the strategic plan. And so this is one of the part of the context that we operate in now, that businesses actually need to be strategic in everything that you do. And not just businesses, but even us as individuals. We need to know where we are now, where we are going, and how we plan to get there. The other context we find ourselves in is this whole the need for positive influence, right? And the issue of how do we influence our space wherever we are operating, whether we're at the higher levels of an organization, whether we have our own business, whether it is that we're in middle management or even at the lower level of an organization. There is an opportunity for all of us to positively influence others and influence decision-making regardless of where we are located in our organization. And then thirdly, one of the other contexts that we find ourselves in is this whole need to, what I would say, reimagine. And this came out very clearly in the panel discussion this morning, where we were talking about that whole need for diversification, looking at different ways of introducing different types of industries and so forth. So there is a need for us to reimagine, do things differently in response to a season of change. And all the panelists spoke about how their respective organizations have been trying to satisfy this need to reimagine. So this is the context we find ourselves in: a need to be strategic, a need for positive influence, and then of course, a need to reimagine, do things differently. And it is against this background that the MSc in Strategic Leadership and Innovation really responds to this particular context. And we have done so in 3 different ways. And I'll tell you just to capture the content that responds to this context. We have engaged in our program the use of strategic decision-making tools. And that's a core part of the program, where the participant walks away with a toolkit of strategy, of decision-making tools that you can employ at the personal level, at the business level, if you're in an organization, as well as if you own your own business. So strategic tools as a core part of the program. We also have responded to the context by ensuring that you have been exposed, that participants are exposed to a series of leadership styles. And what we encourage the participants to do is to reflect on what do you want your leadership style to be? How do you want to influence others? And so we have built into the program that level of reflection and projecting forward by way of developing your own personal leadership portfolio, which is a tool that you can now use for your personal development as a leader. And then thirdly, we have provided participants with the opportunity to reimagine in this course, in this program, through the completion of a capstone project. It's not a thesis, it's really called, it's a capstone where you look for opportunities within an organization and where you actually create an innovation project or come up with innovative ideas, do things differently within the organization. So those are the 3 components of the program, right? Decision-making tools, leadership portfolio, and then of course this capstone project. And so we have responded to the context that we're operating in and the needs in the marketplace through this program. And in terms of the delivery, of course, the program is 100% online, 100% coursework. There are no exams. You can actually pursue the entire degree, or you can pursue standalone courses within the program. And then you have 2 options. You have the accelerated option where you can complete it in 1 year, or if you don't have the time to commit in 1 year, of course, you have the option of pursuing it over a 2-year period. So really just a succinct program that responds to the context that we find ourselves in. And I want to take this opportunity. We do have with us on the call one of the lecturers in the program, and we also have a current student in the program. And we will now hand over to I believe we're going over to Shelly Ann Wilson, who is one of the main lecturers in the program. And she will be able to provide the lecturer's perspective on the program. And then, of course, we will hand over to Nicholas Jagdeo, who is one of our students, and he will provide the perspective from the students. And then, of course, we are seeing the questions coming up in the chat, and we will be responding to the questions as they come up. So I will hand over to Shelley.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dean. It is indeed a pleasure to be here today, and it was a pleasure to be part of the insightful conversation that we had in the panel discussion that started off this session. So I want to say a special thank you to Professor Frost and to the panelists for sharing their ideas and their thoughts about strategy and strategic planning. So as Dean Cameron indicated, I'm here to speak on one of the courses in the MSc in Strategic Leadership and Innovation, and the course is Strategic Decision Making. So I'm going to try to contain myself in terms of providing information. I'm going to try to answer 3 questions. So 1, what is this course about? 2, why is this course included in the program? And 3, what content is covered in this course? So what is this course about? So the course really focuses on one of the most critical skills for leaders and for managers, decision making. And as someone, I think it was Dean Cameron, spoke about it, as humans, we make decisions every day. We have to decide what to have for breakfast. We have to decide what to wear to go to work. We have to decide in business how many items of unit X to produce. We have to decide how much to spend on a marketing campaign. This course, however, focuses on decisions that are complex, those that have long-term implications for companies. So should we build a new plant in Jamaica? Should we invest in biotech? Should Republic Bank expand its business into Ghana? Where in the Caribbean and in Latin America should we establish our BPO? So the course is really on strategic decisions as opposed to operational or tactical decisions. However, the tools and techniques that we talk about, that we cover, would be useful in any context, right? And when we talk about strategic decisions, we are speaking about those decisions that would require a large amount of firm resources, those that are going to affect the long-term prosperity of a firm. They're future-oriented. They have consequences that would affect multifunctional areas in a company, right? So why is this course included in the program? So when we talk about the decision, we talk about a specific commitment to action. We know that there are alternatives. We know that there are different consequences associated with those alternatives, and there's uncertainty about the consequences. And we also recognize that decision-making can be viewed as part art and part science. So that art part of it, that is the sixth sense, that is the rumble that you have in your belly, that je ne sais quoi, that experience business sense. We have those everyday decisions that we can make in moments. We can use rules of thumb. We can use common sense. The tactical decisions, we can use some checklists. We can think through the decision traps. But the strategic decisions, that's when we look at a more rigorous approach. And as panel members spoke about, there are several tools and techniques that have been developed over the years. Mr. D'Souza spoke on the tried and proven Porter's 5 forces. He spoke about SWOT. Mr. Tawari spoke on the PESTLE framework. We have decision theory. We have the formalized decision-making process where we go through setting the objective, searching for the alternatives, evaluating the alternatives, making the choice, implementing the choice, and assessing the choice. And very importantly, in this course, we focus on decision quality. So we really get into the elements of decision quality. We consider the decision maker and that commitment to action, the decision frame. We look at how do we identify the alternatives from which to choose. We have to think through the preferences or the values that we have in an organization and among the decision makers. We have to think about the information we need to evaluate our alternatives. And then there must be some logic or some logical reasoning that we use in order to go through our evaluation and then selection of the alternative. In terms of the content that we cover in this course, we go through strategic management, strategic planning, we get into the strategic decision-making process, we speak about problem solving, we speak about decision-making challenges, we get, as Dean Cameron spoke about, we get into the decision-making tools and techniques. So we go into decision trees, sensitivity analysis, scenario planning, system dynamics. We look at ethical decision-making, and we look at how do you evaluate the quality in decision-making. So in a nutshell, I try to capture some of the main points in the course. And I know that I am supposed to now send it across to Nicholas, who was one of the students in the course. It was a semester 1 course. So Nicholas Jagdeo would be able perhaps to speak a bit more about the course and what he learned from the course. So thank you very much. And I'm going to pass it over to Nicholas.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilson. Thank you for being my teacher, my lecturer. Hello, everyone. My name is Nicholas Jagdeo. I just want to say thanks to the panel. Thanks to Dr. Pramel Hutton, Dr. Rambukas, to the Dean Lewis Cameron, and of course to Dr. Wilson and Dr. Frost, who were both lecturers in my program. So I think I'll give you a little background about me and my decision-making process into going into this program. Why do any master's program, right? To me, it's a decision to refine your knowledge, and education should never be static. We should always look for ways to grow. I had worked at a startup in Tel Aviv for 3 or 4 years, and then I moved back to Trinidad, and I wanted to open my own business. And I saw a program at Arthur Lockjack that was being offered, which was a master's in international business, which I did and completed, and it was an amazing experience. But after I graduated, I started to think about what next. And the same day that UWI conferred my degree upon me, I came across this SLIN program, Strategic Leadership and Innovation. And I believe in science. And it just seemed like an amazing program. And it complemented what I had learned in my Masters of International Business, because my Masters of International Business did not really focus on strategy or leadership. It was more of a management degree. So we looked at international trade, economics, international finance, the international business environment, but I really wasn't cultivated as a leader. And when I saw the breakdown of this program, I knew that it was something that I really wanted to do. And so the same day that UWI gave me one degree, I reapplied to UWI for another master's. I think that the draw to this program, as I said, it was the focus on strategic decision making, which is what Dr. Wilson taught me last semester. And it was also that cultivation of leadership. Franca had spoken about the trust that you need in leaders. She said that high trust and medium performance could result in some really, really amazing situations, because not followers, I don't like to use that word, people who have to look up to leaders, we have to have that level of trust in them. That's something that was really, really inculcated in me in this program. I really learned about honing and developing my leadership skills. As Dr. Frost said in his discussion, and he also routinely says, he taught me in 2 courses actually at Lockjack and here, he always talks about changing our behaviors and being accountable. And that's something that really hit home, not just in his course, but throughout this entire program. What I want to say about the pluses of this program, it comes from the dean's office. I don't think that there's any other program in UWI where the dean is so intricately involved in the program. I've felt Dr. Akola's presence throughout this program, which is a good thing. Probably also a bad thing to have the dean be so available, monitoring your performance. But it's been a very good experience having her there. At the end of last semester, so it's interesting, in my Masters of International Business and in this program, I'm the first cohort. So I'm sort of the guinea pig. I keep being a guinea pig for programs, which is a good thing because I'm able to have my voice be heard and I'm able to give my feedback and see that implemented. During our first semester, the coursework, as Dean Nicola said, this is a coursework only program. That was one of the attractions for me. I thought it would be simpler than a exam-based program. Turns out that the coursework is quite intensive, but it's been good. As I was saying, in the first semester, the coursework kind of bumped into each other from the different courses that we were taking, and we gave feedback at the end of the semester, and it was heard. And so this semester, I'm a full-time student, by the way, just to let you all know, so I'm finishing next semester. We were heard, our voices were heard, and this semester the coursework was divided into a much more manageable situation, and that gave me a lot of comfort to know that our program director, who's Lisa McDonald, and Dean Nicola are so present and so available, so there, and that not just present, they listen to our concerns, and it's translated immediately, that these concerns are addressed so immediately. Another plus of this program, I'm from San Fernando, so that trek up the highway could be quite onerous for me, and I guess for any Southern person. And having it be online has been quite positive for me. So I leave work, I don't have to leave work and be in traffic. I get home and I'm able to log on. So that lack of that ability to just be able to relax to go into a program has been very rewarding for me. I think this is the only program at UWI that's being offered entirely online. I'm not sure that, so check me on that, but that was one of the draws as well for me. One of the drawbacks of it being online is that there's not that in-person camaraderie which can develop among students and with the lecturer. But I have a really good comparison because I had Dr. Frost in person for my Lockjack degree, and I had him online for this degree. And I will tell you that he has been exactly the same in both courses. He's quite a demanding lecturer in a good way. And he's been the same. He's been available. He's been there. And not just Dr. Frost, all of the lecturers are so available. And I don't know, I read an article a couple days ago which said that long distance relationships are oftentimes better than in-person relationships. And I'm comparing that, my in-person degree, to this long distance degree. And I think that we were able to develop much more deeper relationships with lecturers and with each other, because we're forced into a unique situation of long distanceness. And so like, I would email, I have an ongoing conversation with one of my lecturers, who is Dr. Roach, Dr. Charlene Roach, who was our lecturer in leadership. And she really, she and I have been having these discussions about leadership across the spectrum, with the invasion of the Ukraine by Putin. And we were analyzing his leadership style, and that's one of the things that I don't think I had in my previous degree, because you are in person, you get all your questions answered in class and you move on. But in this sort of unique learning situation, you're forced to come out of your comfort zone and expand your ability to make relationships. So even with my peers, I found an actual deeper closeness with some of my with some fellow cohort members, and that's been very interesting for me to reflect upon the two experiences. As Dr. Wilson said, her course focused on strategic decision making, but there's also courses on entrepreneurial leadership, which is taught by Dr. Ramkisum Babwa. Coming up, we have a course on innovation, which is in a couple of weeks for me, which is the last semester. And one of the main draws for me was the capstone, as Dean Nicola spoke about. So I found that this capstone was a major draw for me. I saved the best for last, right? Because it's very practical. As I said at the beginning, I have a business idea, and they allowed me to use my business idea as my research project for this capstone. It's so practical for me, because I had pitch that to my previous degree. And I don't think UWI would have allowed it at that point in time. But given all the changes that have happened in the world, and given that Dean Okola is directly involved in the construction and the maintenance of this degree, it's a very practical thing. It was something that really, really pulled me in. I don't know if I ever said that before to any of the lecturers, but that was one of my main draws to this program, is that I was able to use something that would have, not that any research project is not practical, but this would directly benefit me in the future. So in closing, I think everyone's choice and pathway to a degree program is different. You know, if you're looking for a management degree, then you go a traditional management route. But this to me really, really has developed my skills as a leader. It's developed my understanding of strategy and how to be strategic, not just in business thinking, but on all levels of life, as Dr. Wilson said, you know, having completed, and let's see, what new modules? Patrick, I'll have to let them answer that question. At the end of it, I just want to give one takeaway that I've had from this project, from this program, which is innovation. That term, which is used and bandied about so freely by people, you know, innovation. But what does it really mean? And in the coursework, I've really been forced to expand my understanding of this. You know, as I said, I worked in Tel Aviv, and we use that word there, and it's used to describe Israel a lot. And in Trinidad, we use it a lot as well. But I don't think I really understood what it was. And what I've managed to gain from this program is an understanding of innovation. I'll tell you what it is. We are all creative, and creativity, we come up with ideas where we're able to, you know, brainstorm, but how do we follow through? And that's where innovation comes in. Innovation is the realization of that creativity. And to pull it back to my capstone, my business idea is being realized with the writing of my capstone in a very, very tangible, very, very innovative way. So that's the end of my talk. Thank you, everyone. I hope that, you know, for those who are interested in the program, that you reach out. I can tell you personally that it's been a transformative experience for me. And I hope if you join that it will be for you as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. We really appreciate that very comprehensive experience that you would have shared with us. Your journey is a remarkable one, especially moving from one master's to the next. I don't think there are many people who can actually say that they would have done that. So kudos to you on making that move. I want to now open up the floor to any questions that persons may have as it relates to the SLIN program, as well as the professional development certificate in strategic management, which we have coming on stream on May 18th. So the floor is now open to ask questions. You can put on your mic. You can even put your camera on if you so desire for us to see you and to meet with you at this time. So we're having some questions being answered in the chat presently. One of those questions being, having completed the MSc in Strategic Leadership and Management, what new modules are in this program? And Lisa would have responded to Patrick saying that the SLIN program is basically a new program with the taught courses very different to the Strategic Leadership and Management program. There are 5 new courses and 2 heavily modified courses and the incorporation of a leadership portfolio. So you're seeing that the 2 programs are in fact distinct, and we invite you all to apply and to reach out to the faculty to learn more about the options available to you to strengthen your competency in strategy. Feel free to raise your hand to just probably speak on the mic. We are here, we are at your disposal to answer any questions that you may have. The raise hand option is there, and we are inviting you to speak. If we realize that there are no questions, we would wrap up the session, and we would invite you again to send us email on this. The name of the program, SADIA is the Strategic Leadership and Innovation Masters Program. Chanel Chutu is asking, how different is this program from doing an MBA? I don't know who would like to take this question at this time from on our panel.
I don't know if Nicholas wants to start off and then I can jump in after, or you want
No,
me?
no problem.
Dr. Cameron,
No problem.
is your mic unmuted? I'm not hearing anything.
Nicholas is going to jump in first from his perspective.
Yep, I will. Thanks, Dr. Akola. How is this program different from doing an MBA? An MBA is very, very important. It does develop your management skills and your understanding of business. You'll focus on project management, you'll focus on economics, you'll learn about accounting, finance, but this program is very different. It focuses on your leadership abilities and your strategic decision making. I don't think MBAs in general focus on that. I don't think that they have, they don't teach you how to be a leader. This is something that the panelists were really, really focusing on. And I noticed Dr. Frost had talked about it a lot. It's that development of leadership styles and leadership skills, which isn't always taught in an MBA. Leaders are not, from what I've learned from this program, leaders are not born, they're made. We have to develop ourselves, and you can't just develop yourself by yourself and with your experiences. I mean, you can, of course, but it helps a lot to have people who have experiences and to be exposed to academic researchers on a topic like that. And I think that's how this program differentiates itself from an MBA. We did have, of course, aspects of the course that overlapped with what an MBA does. Like we have a course on the human side of innovation, which focuses on that HR aspect and developing your HR team to be an innovative team. So there are overlapping aspects, but it's a very different program. And I think that it's a unique program. And I hope that answers your question. And Dina Kohli, you could jump in now.
Yeah, thanks. I think you hit the nail on the head there with the point about the MBA focuses more on business management, equipping you with tools to manage a business, assess a business performance. So you would focus more on the financial aspect, economics. You will focus a bit on HR as well. Whereas with this program, it's not so much on business management, but more on strategic decision making and leadership. And then, of course, you have the innovation component. So it's important, and it's a good question, because it's important for you to know the distinction between the two so that you can make an informed decision in terms of what your needs are at this time. Right? So one is more strategy and leadership, heavy emphasis on the leadership. And of course, the MBA is more business operations, business management, business administration.
All right, so if we have no more questions at this time, I now invite the Deputy Dean of Planning and Programming, Dr. Mina Rambukas, to do a wrap-up of today's session.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pamela Hutton. It is really a very heartening for me to be here this morning to give the wrap-up vote of thanks. I really would like to take the opportunity to say thank you for joining us this morning and really spending the time to learn about the different pathways that the Faculty of Social Sciences offer on strategy, leadership, strategic management, innovation. The Faculty of Social Sciences have built-in flexibility and transformation in our educational offerings. And I want to express my sincerest gratitude to our speakers who have so selflessly donated their time and their effort in speaking to us this morning about what strategic planning is and how they would have practiced it in their organization. From their discussions this morning, they have certainly highlighted to us how important strategic management and innovation is for the success of future businesses activities, especially in today's disruptive environment. Thank you to our faculty members who have provided the information on our multiple learning pathways program of the Faculty of Social Sciences. And please feel free to reach out to us if you have any more questions or like any additional information that we may not have provided you. We have placed our contact information on the chat, and we will be reaching out to you in the days to come to give you some more information about our offerings on our multiple learning pathways. Again, thank you for sharing your morning with us. And I would like to say to you, please have a very pleasant day. God bless. Goodbye, everybody.